Hey there, and welcome to Tales by June, where hearts break, heal, and sometimes seek revenge. Let's begin today's story.
Hey, before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. They say a wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. For me, it was the day my heart stopped beating, the day I died, and the day I was reborn. I stood in front of the mirror in my childhood bedroom, dressed in white silk that shimmered in the morning light. The lace sleeves hugged my arms, the sweetheart neckline framed my collarbones, and the long train spilled like liquid snow behind me. My makeup artist had gone for a soft, glowing look, the kind that made me look like the perfect bride. Perfect. That was the word people always used for me. The perfect daughter, the perfect student, the perfect fiancé. But as I stared at my reflection, my chest tightened. This wasn't just any man I was marrying. It was Liam Carter. My Liam. We had grown up together in the same leafy neighborhood. He was the boy who used to chase me with water balloons in the summer and share his fries with me in high school. The boy who comforted me when my sister Eliza would get all the attention from our parents. He was my safe place, my anchor. So when our families arranged the marriage, it felt right, like it was always meant to happen. There was a knock on the door. My heart did its familiar flutter. "Come in," I called, expecting it to be my mother. Instead, it was Eliza. She swept in like she owned the air in the room. My sister was beautiful in the way magazine covers were: tall, blonde, every strand of hair in place. Her dress was a champagne color, hugging her perfect figure. Her eyes roamed over me, and her smile didn't reach them. "You look nice," she said, like it was a backhanded compliment. "Thanks," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "Shouldn't you be helping with the guests?" "Oh, I'm just here to wish you luck," she said, but her tone was strange, almost smug. Something in my gut twisted, but I brushed it off. Today was too important for drama. The ceremony was being held at the grand hall of the Carter estate, a sprawling mansion surrounded by manicured gardens. The guests were already gathered, the chandeliers blazing overhead, the music soft and romantic. My father held my arm as we stood at the entrance. He didn't smile. My father didn't smile much at me, but for Eliza, his face would light up like a sunrise. Today, his expression was more businesslike. "Remember, Arya," he murmured, "this marriage will unite our families. Don't mess this up." I swallowed the sting of his words and nodded. Then the doors opened. I walked down the aisle slowly, my eyes locked on Liam at the altar. He looked devastatingly handsome in his black tux, his dark hair neatly styled, his jaw set in that quiet confidence I'd always loved. But something was off. His eyes weren't lighting up. His smile was faint, forced. When I reached him, I expected him to take my hands, but before he could move, Eliza's voice cut through the silence. "I can't let this happen," she cried. The guests gasped. All eyes turned to her as she stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "I'm sorry, Arya," she said, looking at me briefly before turning to Liam. "But I love him, and he loves me." It was as if the world tilted. My hearing went fuzzy. My eyes shot to Liam, waiting for him to laugh it off, to deny it, to tell everyone this was insane. But he stayed silent, his jaw clenched. And in that moment, I had my answer. The whispers started. My relatives. His relatives. Guests. All of them watching me, pitying me. My mother gasped, putting a hand over her chest. My father's eyes went wide, but then almost instantly they softened toward Eliza. "Eliza," my father said, stepping forward, "what are you saying?" "That I love him," she repeated, her voice breaking in a perfect display of vulnerability. "And I can't watch him marry her when he doesn't want to." I turned to Liam, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is this true?" He looked at me, and the apology in his eyes was worse than a knife. "I'm sorry, Arya." My knees almost buckled. I could feel the humiliation burning my skin, the judgment of hundreds of eyes. Then my father did the unthinkable. He looked at Liam and said, "If this is how you both feel, perhaps we can change the arrangement." Change the arrangement. On my wedding day. As if I was some faulty contract to be replaced. My mother began murmuring to Eliza, consoling her as if she were the victim. That's when something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, my heels clicking like gunshots. I looked at Eliza first and slapped her so hard the sound echoed through the hall. Then I turned to Liam. My palm connected with his cheek in a sharp, satisfying crack. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "How dare you?" I said, my voice shaking with fury. "How dare you both make a fool of me in front of the whole world?" "Arya, calm down," my father started, reaching for me. I jerked away. "No! I've been calm my entire life while you ignored me, while you made me second to her in everything. Not anymore." The entire hall was silent, the air heavy with tension. "I swear," I said, my voice steady now, "I will destroy every single one of you who laughed at me today. Liam, Eliza, and you, father, mother, you'll regret making me your joke." I turned on my heel and walked out, my train dragging like a trail of ashes behind me. That was the day Arya Bennett died, and the woman who walked out of that hall was someone else entirely. The rain started just as I stepped out of the grand hall. Cold droplets hit my face, smearing my makeup, soaking the silk of my gown. The air smelled like wet pavement and betrayal. I didn't care. I kicked off my heels and walked barefoot down the stone steps, my dress dragging through puddles. The world around me blurred. The mansion, the expensive cars, the shocked guests who stood under umbrellas whispering behind their hands. I kept walking. Each step felt like it was carrying me farther away from the girl who used to smile easily, the girl who believed in childhood promises. It was a hot July afternoon. Liam and I were sitting on the grass behind my house, sipping sodas. My sister Eliza was at ballet camp, and for once I had him all to myself. "You know," Liam had said, his eyes squinting in the sun, "one day I'm going to marry you." I'd laughed, the sound light and innocent. "You're not supposed to say that when we're 10. He'd grinned, tossing a pebble into the pond. "I don't care. I'll say it again when we're 20, and 30, and 40. Back then, I believed him. The rain poured harder, plastering my hair to my face. My teeth chattered, but my chest burned with something hotter than anger. Eliza had been crowned Winter Queen, of course. My parents had beamed at her from the front row, taking photo after photo. I'd been there too, sitting in the bleachers with Liam. When she came over afterward, my father had barely glanced at me before saying, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Liam had taken my hand under the table. "Ignore him," he'd whispered. "I see you, Arya," and I had believed him then too. The city streets glistened under the streetlights. I didn't know how far I'd walked, but my gown was heavy with rainwater, clinging to my skin. I must have looked like some ghost wandering through the night. I stopped in front of a small electronics store. The windows were fogged from the humidity, but one large TV screen glowed brightly, facing the street. And then I froze. It was them. A breaking news segment, footage from earlier that evening. Eliza in a lavish white dress, my parents standing proudly beside her. Liam at her side, in the same tux he'd worn when I walked down the aisle to him only hours ago. They were smiling, all of them. My mother's eyes sparkled. My father looked triumphant. Eliza was radiant. And Liam's smile didn't reach his eyes. It was tight, forced, like a man trapped in a role he couldn't escape. But that didn't matter. The world would see him as the happy groom. And me? I was just the discarded bride. My fists clenched until my nails dug into my palms. I felt no tears now, only fire. "I will destroy you," I whispered to the glass. "Every single one of you." And as lightning lit the sky, I knew exactly where to go. By the time I reached the wrought iron gates of the Blackwell estate, the world felt like it was drowning. The mansion loomed ahead, a sprawling structure of black stone and glass, lit only by the warm golden glow spilling from its massive windows. It wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. I pushed the gate open, ignoring the security cameras that tracked my every step. My soaked gown clung to my body like a second skin, and my hair was a dark, wet tangle. When the front doors opened, I almost flinched at the sight of him. Damien Blackwell. He was taller than I remembered from the business galas. Broad shoulders under a black dress shirt, sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal strong forearms. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his cold gray eyes scanned me like I was a puzzle he had no interest in solving. "Arya Bennett," he said, his voice a deep, dangerous rumble. "Did you get lost on your way to a funeral? Or was it your own?" I didn't answer. I stepped forward, the wet fabric of my dress dripping onto his immaculate marble floor. His gaze swept over me, slow and deliberate. "Ah," I heard the gossip, the discarded bride. A smirk curved his lips. Your family really outdid themselves this time. The jab sliced deep, but I didn't flinch. And yours? I finally said. Still hiding behind your money and grudges? His eyes sharpened. Careful, little Bennett. You're standing in my house, dripping on my floor. Then maybe you should hear me out before you throw me out. I shot back, my voice steady despite the storm raging outside and inside me. He tilted his head, studying me like a chess player evaluating an opponent. Go on, amuse me. I want a deal, I said. A marriage contract, 6 months. His brow arched. Marriage? With you? Yes, with me. I stepped closer. You and I both know my so-called family only understands 2 things, power and humiliation. I can't destroy them alone, but with you. He chuckled, low and mocking. You think I'd marry you just to play your petty revenge games? I didn't blink. This wouldn't just be for me. I know about your grandfather. And mine. The deal that ruined the Blackwells decades ago. The betrayal. My grandfather's betrayal. You've been waiting a long time for payback. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not surprise, interest. You've done your homework, he said slowly. But why should I help you? What's in it for me besides the satisfaction of ruining a family I already despise? You get the headlines, I said. You get to humiliate the Bennetts publicly. And when we're done, you walk away with your reputation bigger than ever. No strings. His lips curved into a slow, dangerous smirk. Interesting. He was silent for a long moment, then extended his hand. 6 months. No more. 6 months, I agreed, my fingers cold as I placed them in his. His grip was firm, his eyes locked on mine. Welcome to the Blackwell estate, Mrs. Almost. I exhaled, tension easing slightly, until he added, You look like hell. You'll stay the night. You'd only drown out there in the storm, and I'm not in the mood for a police report. He stepped aside, letting me into the vast, dimly lit mansion. And just like that, the devil let me into his lair. The Blackwell mansion was silent except for the steady patter of rain against the tall windows. Damien led me through a grand hallway lined with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something darker. Expensive cologne, maybe. You can take the guest suite upstairs, he said, his tone casual, but his eyes still watching me like a hawk. I'd offer you dinner, but you look more like the type who's ready to devour a soul rather than a steak. I glanced at him. Yours would be a little too bitter for my taste. His lips twitched. Ah, so the discarded bride has teeth. I ignored the jab and followed him up the marble staircase. The guest suite was bigger than my entire apartment. King-sized bed, silk sheets, a chandelier hanging over the room. But as soon as I set down the towel he'd tossed me, my phone began to buzz. First call. Her voice was sharp before I could even speak. Arya, the reception is in 2 days. We expect you to attend. Don't make things harder for your sister. I laughed, low, humorless. Yes, wouldn't want to ruin her fairy tale. She's already stolen my groom. She might as well have my blessing too. Don't be dramatic. I hung up. Second call. Liam. A message this time. I'm sorry. I stared at the 2 words, my lips curling. That was all he had to say? Not an explanation. Not the truth. Just a coward's apology. I didn't bother replying. Third call. Grandpa Bennett, the patriarch himself. His voice carried the weight of command. Arya, enough sulking. Come to the reception. Stand by your family. That's what a Bennett does. I held the phone tighter. A Bennett also stabs people in the back. Congratulations, I'm finally living up to the family legacy. Watch your tone. No, you watch yours, I snapped. You've turned me into the perfect weapon, Grandpa, and I can't wait to aim it at all of you. I hung up without waiting for his reply. By the time Damien knocked lightly on the doorframe, I was seething. He leaned against the wall, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a faint smirk playing at his lips. Family drama? He asked. You could say that. They sound charming, he deadpanned. We should have them over for dinner sometime. I'll make sure the knives are extra sharp. A sudden, wicked thought bloomed in my mind. I straightened. Actually, Damien, I've decided when our wedding will be. His brow arched. Oh, let me guess. Before the ink dries on the contract? The day of my sister's reception. For a moment, there was only silence. Then his smirk widened into something positively dangerous. You want to flop their big celebration and steal the headlines? I have to admit, Bennett, you're evil. Coming from you, I'll take that as a compliment. He pushed off the wall, walking toward me until he was close enough that I could see the storm in his gray eyes. Fine. We'll make it grand. Extravagant. A wedding so spectacular, the Bennetts will choke on their own champagne. And you'll enjoy every second of it, I said. Oh, I already am, he murmured. Just don't fall in love with me, Bennett. I'm not the fairy tale type. I smiled coldly. Neither am I. I had imagined my wedding day so many times growing up. The warm smiles of my parents, the pride in their eyes, Liam waiting for me at the altar. But the real thing? It wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. Mine and Damien's. And it would be the weapon that gutted the Bennetts in front of the whole city. 2 days before, Damien didn't waste a second after I suggested the date. By the time the clock struck midnight, his phone was glowing with emails, contracts, and confirmations. He had an entire wedding team on speed dial. People who, by their urgent tones, were used to working for him at the last minute and delivering perfection. We sat in the massive dining hall of the Blackwell mansion, a storm still raging outside. My hair was still damp from earlier, but my mind was sharp. Ballroom? His partner asked over speakerphone. The Blackwell Tower Crystal Hall, Damien said without hesitation. Cancel anything booked there and pay double. Color theme? I leaned forward. White roses, orchids, gold detailing, everything dripping in opulence. Damien's mouth curved. Make sure the aisle runner is embroidered in gold, and triple the candles. The planner stammered a yes and hung up, probably already panicking. I sipped the tea the butler had brought me. You really are enjoying this. I enjoy winning, Damien said simply. And you, Bennett, are my most entertaining project yet. The day before dress fittings, diamond selection, guest list vetting, it was an exhausting and intoxicating blur. I didn't even notice the hours passing until Cassandra, Damien's younger sister, sauntered into the fitting room. I heard the rumor, she said, leaning against the doorframe, her eyes scanning my reflection in the mirror. You're marrying my brother? On the Bennett's big night? Rumor? I adjusted the gown's sleeve. No, it's breaking news. She laughed. I like you. The day of the wedding, by late afternoon, the Crystal Hall was glowing like something out of a dream. The marble floors were polished to mirror perfection, chandeliers the size of cars hung from the ceiling, and every surface bloomed with roses and orchids. The scent was intoxicating, the kind of luxury that made you feel both awed and a little dizzy. I arrived in a white satin gown that hugged every curve, the train trailing behind me like a whisper of snow. The bodice shimmered with hand-sewn beads, and the veil cascaded to the floor. Damien was already at the altar, in a black tux that fit him like it was made for his frame alone. He didn't smile, Damien rarely did, but the faint curve at the corner of his lips was enough to make my pulse skip. We exchanged vows under the watchful eyes of the city's elite and the constant flash of cameras. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Damien didn't hesitate. The kiss was slow, deliberate, just long enough for the photographers to lose their minds. I heard the click of cameras. I felt the weight of every lens capturing the moment. It was perfect. Half the headlines. The photos were online within the hour. By the time Damien and I reached the reception dinner in one of the private halls upstairs, every major news outlet had it plastered across their homepage. Billionaire Damien Blackwell weds Aria Bennett in lavish surprise ceremony. Power couple's wedding overshadows Bennett family reception. The Bennett's reception. Across town, I wasn't there, but people sent me videos. Eliza was on the stage, posing for photos in her champagne-colored gown when a guest's phone buzzed. One by one, others glanced down at their screens. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Her smile faltered. What's wrong? She asked someone near the stage. They held up their phone, showing my wedding photo. Damien's hand on my waist, his lips pressed to mine. My mother's jaw dropped, champagne sloshing over the rim of her glass. My father's face went sheet white. Liam froze. For a heartbeat, he looked like he might walk out entirely, but then his face shuddered into a perfect poker mask. The video ended with Eliza glaring at the screen like it had personally betrayed her. Back in our suite, Damien poured himself a glass of whiskey. Cassandra had called twice already, half amused, half scandalized. You really did it, she said over the phone, her voice full of disbelief. A Bennett? Mother's going to have a coronary. She'll live, Damien replied lazily. I've given her worse headaches. Our wedding night. When we finally got back to the mansion, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the massive bed in the master suite. Damien loosened his tie, glancing at me. So, Mrs. Blackwell, ready for the passionate wedding night everyone's imagining? I yawned. Sure. You sleep on your side, I'll sleep on mine, and we'll keep the magic alive by not speaking until morning. He smirked. Romantic. Truly. We ended up lying there, both scrolling through our phones, watching the chaos our wedding had caused online. It was better than any honeymoon. Just past midnight, Damien's phone lit up. He glanced at it and groaned. Grandfather? He answered, putting it on speaker. Have you lost your mind? The old man's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. A Bennett? Without consulting me? You've finally lost your edge, boy. Good evening to you too, Damien said, sounding bored. I don't care about your little games, but if you've married her, I expect to see her. Dinner. Tomorrow? Correct. 7 sharp. The line went dead. Damien looked over at me with that half smile again. Looks like you're meeting the real head of the family. I stretched under the blankets. Good. I've been dying for some real sport. The Blackwell Estate's dining room looked like it belonged in a history book. High ceilings painted with murals, a crystal chandelier older than the country, and a long table so polished it reflected your face like glass. Damien's parents were already seated when we arrived. His mother, Victoria Blackwell, was a vision in an emerald silk gown, her diamonds catching the light like shards of ice. His father, Charles, sat beside her, posture military straight, gaze assessing. At the head of the table sat the true ruler of the Blackwell dynasty, Alexander Blackwell, Damien's grandfather. White hair, piercing steel-gray eyes, and a cane resting beside his chair like a weapon. Arya Bennett, Victoria said smoothly as I took my seat. I must say, we didn't expect Damien to bring home a Bennett. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I returned it politely. And yet, here I am. Life is full of surprises. Alexander's cane tapped the floor once. The Bennetts are known, though not always for the right reasons. I folded my napkin onto my lap. I could say the same for the Blackwells, Mr. Blackwell. But that's the beauty of reputation. It's always open to interpretation. Damien smirked faintly beside me, sipping his wine. Charles leaned forward. Tell me, Arya, how does it feel to step from modest society into this one? Comfortable, I said with a calm smile. Money doesn't make the room warmer, Mr. Blackwell. People do. Even Alexander's eyes flickered at that. Victoria tried again. And you'll find our family has certain expectations for our daughters-in-law. I look forward to hearing them, I replied sweetly. Though I believe marriage is also about what the wife expects from the family she joins. Damien's smirk turned into an amused glance at me, like I'd just passed some invisible test. By the time dessert was served, the tone had shifted. Alexander, instead of another jab, asked, Tell me, Arya, what do you want from this marriage? I met his gaze without hesitation. Respect, loyalty, and to bring no shame to the Blackwell name, intentionally or otherwise. There was a pause. Then the old man chuckled. Low, dangerous, but not unkind. Well, at least she's not spineless. Damien's parents stayed quiet after that. We arrived home close to midnight. Damien went straight upstairs, loosening his tie. I headed to my own suite, slipping out of my heels with a sigh of relief. I just unzipped my dress halfway when the door swung open. Damien froze in the doorway. His eyes lingered. I arched a brow. See something you like, Mr. Blackwell? He cleared his throat, looking away. I was looking for the, guest room key. Of course you were. I smirked, sliding the zipper the rest of the way down. Keys are always found in women's bedrooms at midnight. He stepped inside, feigning nonchalance. Careful, Mrs. Blackwell. If you keep teasing me, people might start thinking this marriage is real. I tossed my dress onto the chair. Relax, Damien. I wouldn't want to ruin our perfectly fake relationship. We ended up bickering over whether he should knock before entering my rooms, half serious, half smiling, until I pushed him out and locked the door. Across town, the Bennett's dining room was thick with tension. Eliza slammed her wine glass down so hard it cracked. She did this on purpose. She humiliated me. Stole my night. Their grandfather's voice boomed across the table. A Blackwell marriage is no trivial matter, and you're telling me none of you knew? Arya's mother twisted her napkin. We thought she was abroad. We didn't think. You didn't think at all, he cut her off. Now the city is talking about her. Not you. Not your precious reception. Liam sat at the far end, silent. He didn't touch his food. His gaze was distant. Jaw clenched so tight the muscle twitched. Eliza kept pacing, her gown rustling furiously. I want her ruined. I want her... Enough! Their grandfather barked. We do nothing until I decide. But mark my words, the Bennets will not be outshone by a girl who thinks she can outplay us. The silence that followed was colder than the winter wind outside. Damien's office was nothing short of intimidating. Panoramic city views, black marble floors, and a desk big enough to stage a political coup on. He leaned back in his chair as I walked in, my heels clicking against the stone. You're late, he said without looking up. I set my bag down and sat across from him. It's 8:55. He smirked. Exactly. The best people are always 10 minutes early. Guess you'll have to settle for the best and fashionable, I shot back, flipping open my laptop. By lunchtime, I'd quietly reached out to 3 of Bennett Corp's biggest overseas investors, men who owed me favors from my influencer days. One by one, they agreed to switch their portfolios to Blackwell Corp. When Damien got the final confirmation email, he looked at me over the top of his glass of scotch. You're dangerous. You hired me for a reason, I said, pretending to study a file. He leaned in slightly. Oh, I had other reasons too. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't hide the smile tugging at my lips. Bennett Mansion. The panic that evening, the Bennett's boardroom was chaos. Eliza slammed a folder shut. We just lost 3 of our biggest backers. Liam rubbed his temples. And their press statements all say the same thing, aligning with stronger leadership. Their grandfather's voice was low and lethal. This is Arya. No one else would have the audacity. Eliza's face twisted. She thinks she's clever. She is clever, the old man cut in. And if she's working with the Blackwells, this is only the beginning. Liam's jaw tightened. We should talk to her. Eliza scoffed. Oh, yes. I'm sure she'll drop her revenge plan over tea and biscuits. The annual Charity Investors Gala was where power was displayed, traded, and whispered about. Damien and I walked in arm, cameras flashing so fast it was like stepping into daylight. He bent his head toward me. Enjoying yourself, Mrs. Blackwell? Immensely, I murmured, especially knowing every Bennett in this room wants me gone. His lips curved. Then let's give them a reason to really hate us. My parents and grandfather intercepted me first, their smiles tight. Arya, my father began, this path you're on is mine to walk, I cut in smoothly. You taught me to stand up for myself. I'm just applying the lesson. Grandfather's voice was gravel. This isn't a game. You could destroy your own family. I met his gaze without flinching. Family destroys itself when it chooses pride over loyalty. Before he could answer, Eliza appeared, draped in gold silk, her smirk venomous. Well, if it isn't Mrs. Blackwell, tell me, how does it feel to marry into money you didn't earn? I smiled like she just complimented my shoes. About as good as it feels to watch you lose money you didn't manage. Her smirk faltered. Liam from the corner, I caught Liam's eyes. He looked tired, sad, almost defeated. He took a step toward me, like he wanted to say something. But Damien was there first, his arm slipping back around my waist. Better luck next time, Bennett, Damien said, his tone dripping with mockery. Oh, and get ready. This was just the opening act. We left the gala to the click of cameras and the buzz of whispers. My head was high, my smile unshaken. Damien glanced sideways at me as we stepped into the limousine. You enjoyed that, didn't you? Almost as much as I'll enjoy the next one, I said, settling into the seat. Outside, the city lights blurred past, but inside, the war had only just begun. 5 months had passed since the gala, and somewhere between boardroom battles and quiet dinners, Damien and I had become friends. Real friends. The kind who text sarcastic comments during boring meetings, who share midnight takeout on the balcony, who tease each other until one of us throws a pillow in retaliation. But there were moments, small, fleeting, when his gaze lingered too long, when his laugh softened, when his voice carried an undertone I couldn't quite name, and those moments scared me more than I admitted. The call. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, until I heard the voice. Arya, my grandfather. Dinner, tonight. Bring your husband. Click. The Bennett mansion was exactly as I remembered. Too big, too cold, too perfect. Damien walked beside me, his hand resting lightly on my lower back, the picture of control. But I could feel the tension radiating off him. The dining room was full. My parents, my grandfather, Liam, Eliza, all seated like we were about to negotiate a ceasefire between warring kingdoms. Grandfather didn't waste time. "Arya," he said between measured bites, "you've proven your capabilities. But family should not destroy family. I suggest you stop now, before there's nothing left of the Bennets to save." Damien's fork stilled. "With respect, sir, what happens to the Bennets is the result of their own choices." The air crackled. The rest of the meal was polite on the surface, but under the table, I was gripping my napkin so hard my knuckles ached. After dessert, I slipped away into the garden for air. The roses were still blooming, their scent painfully nostalgic. "Arya?" I turned to see Liam. His eyes were tired, his posture slouched, like he'd aged years and months. "I was a fool," he said quietly. "Eliza came to me when things were bad between us. I thought she cared, but it was all a game to her." I stayed silent. "I regret it every day," he continued. "Losing you, hurting you. I'm sorry." It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't enough, but it was the truth. And for the first time, I felt something unexpected. Closure. When he stepped forward, arms opening in what seemed like an instinctive hug, the punch. A hand grabbed my wrist and yanked me back. Damien's fist connected with Liam's jaw so fast I barely saw it happen. "Stay the hell away from her," Damien growled, his voice low and lethal. "Damien!" I shouted, but he was already pulling me away. The moment the car door shut, he slammed his foot on the accelerator. "Damien, slow down." I grabbed the side of the seat. "He had no right to touch you," he bit out, eyes locked on the road. "You shouldn't have done that. We're almost done, 1 month left, and then we're free to..." "To what?" he snapped, glancing at me. "Watch you walk away? Let someone else have you?" I froze. He pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and before I could move, he was leaning across the console, his hand cupping my jaw, his mouth crashing onto mine. It wasn't gentle. It was fierce, desperate, like he'd been holding it back for far too long. When he pulled back, his eyes burned into mine. "You are mine, Arya. No one touches you. No one takes you from me." I sat frozen, my heart pounding, my mind spinning. "This was a contract," I whispered. "That's all." A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips. "Then here's my challenge," he murmured. "I'm going to make you fall in love with me. And when I do, you won't want to leave." The new arrangement that night? He didn't go to his room. When I came out of the bathroom, he was already lying on my bed, one arm behind his head, looking entirely too comfortable. "This is my side now," he said. I stared. "You can't just..." "Too late." He patted the pillow beside him. "Get used to it, Mrs. Blackwell." And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I wanted to argue. A new morning, I woke up to the faint smell of coffee, and the unnerving awareness that something, or someone, was far too close. When I opened my eyes, Damien was lying on his side, head propped on his hand, staring at me like I was the morning headline he'd been waiting to read. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwell," he drawled. I blinked. "Do you just watch people sleep?" "Only when they're cute." His grin was unreasonably smug. I threw a pillow at his face. Damien had apparently decided that cooking breakfast together was a bonding exercise, which was fine, except he was terrible at it. "Damien, that's not how you flip an omelet," I started, just as he flipped it too high, sending it half onto the stove and half onto the floor. 5-second rule?" he suggested. I burst out laughing, clutching the counter for balance. At work, things weren't much better. Damien had started finding excuses to check in on me. "This report could have been emailed," I muttered one afternoon as he leaned casually on my desk. "And missed the chance to see you blush? Not worth it." I tried to glare, but my face betrayed me, heating up instantly when his fingers brushed mine as he handed me a file. He leaned over my shoulder to help with a presentation, his chest warm against my back. "You're in my space," I said, trying not to sound breathless. "That's the point." I accidentally clicked to the wrong slide, a spreadsheet of raw numbers. He sighed. "Romantic moment ruined. Thanks, Excel." In the elevator, he slipped his hand into mine. "What are you doing?" "Cold hands. You're warm. You have gloves. I like yours better." During a coffee break, he leaned down suddenly. "Hold still." My heart skipped. "Why?" "You had foam on your lip." He kissed me softly, then pulled back with an innocent shrug. "See? Emergency handled." I spent the rest of the meeting unable to look at him without turning crimson. That evening, we ended up on the balcony again, sharing tea under the city lights. You laugh a lot more now, he said quietly. I looked at him, surprised. Do I? Yeah. He smiled. Softer this time, almost shy himself. I like it. I stared into my tea to hide my blush. Then, as if sensing he was close to crossing another invisible line, he leaned back with that maddening smirk. Don't worry, Arya. I'll get you to fall for me. I've got time. And for the first time, I wasn't so sure he didn't. It began like a whisper and turned into a storm, a headline screaming across news portals and trending tags. Arya Bennett, husband stealer? New photos reveal shocking affairs. The article was dripping with poison, full of badly doctored photos of me wrapped around men I had never met, pasted into scandalous scenes designed to humiliate. Eliza's fingerprints were all over it, her smug face appearing in sly interviews where she worried for her poor, manipulated husband and subtly painted me as a gold-digging predator. By midday, the internet had become a courtroom, and I was already declared guilty. Strangers spat venom online. She's shameless. Blackwell money can't buy class. Damien deserves better. I tried to ignore it, locking myself in our bedroom, phone face down, but the words crawled under my skin. I didn't hear Damien's phone ring until his voice dropped into that lethal, quiet register. Mother. Father. The voices on the other end were sharp, frantic, full of judgment. Damien, this scandal is a disgrace to the Blackwell name. Do you understand how this makes us look? End this nonsense before it ruins us. Divorce her. A heavier male voice cut in, his father, deeper, colder. You have to think of the family first. She's dragging us into the mud. There was a long pause before Damien answered, his tone razor sharp. No, Arya is innocent. She's the love of my life, and I will not leave her. Not now, not ever. The only thing ruining this family name is how quickly you choose to believe lies over me. His parents sputtered in disbelief, but he cut them off, hanging up with a final, unyielding, "This conversation is over." He came to me then, finding me sitting on the bed with my knees drawn up, silent tears running down my cheeks, my chest aching with every breath. They all believe it, I whispered, my voice breaking. I can't. But before I could finish, Damien was kneeling in front of me, taking my face in his hands, his gaze fierce. Look at me, Arya. I'm going to clear your name. I'm going to destroy every single person who dared do this to you. And Eliza? His voice dropped to something dangerous. She's going to wish she'd never been born. There was no hesitation in him, no flicker of doubt, and in that moment, I believed him more than I believed the ground beneath my feet. And maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe the rawness of the day, maybe the way he held me like I was something precious instead of something broken. But when he leaned in, I didn't pull away. His kiss was fierce, urgent, almost angry at first, before softening into something deeper, something that made my heart tremble. One touch became two, clothes fell away, and the unspoken barrier between us shattered. For the first time, Damien and I weren't just bound by a contract. We became one, tangled in heat, comfort, and a promise neither of us dared say aloud. Outside, the scandal raged like a storm, but in that room, in his arms, I felt untouchable. The morning after the storm felt strangely calm. Too calm, like the world was holding its breath. But Damien wasn't calm. He had been awake long before me, standing by the window with his phone in hand, eyes cold and calculating, the faintest smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. When I asked what he was doing, he only said, "Returning the favor," before disappearing into his office. Hours passed with the low murmur of his voice on back-to-back calls, the tap of keys, the sharp slide of paper across his desk. He didn't tell me details, but I could feel the shift in the air. Damien was hunting. By midday, whispers began trickling through social media. Screenshots of emails from Eliza's burner accounts, payments to gossip bloggers, receipts showing she'd hired a digital manipulation firm to create the photos. Within hours, an anonymous expose appeared on the very same news portals that had smeared me, complete with evidence so airtight it could choke. The tide turned instantly. Hashtags flipped, comments reversed, and the world that had mocked me yesterday was now sharpening their knives for Eliza. By evening, a video went viral of Damien standing outside his office, cameras flashing as he spoke in that lethal, measured tone. My wife is the victim here. Anyone who spreads falsehoods about her will face legal consequences. As for Eliza Bennett, The law will take its course. This is not a threat. It's a promise. I watched from our living room, my chest tight with something I didn't want to name. Pride. Gratitude. Something deeper. That night, we didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Damien simply pulled me onto the couch beside him, wrapped his arm around me, and pressed a kiss to the top of my head like I belonged there. The scandal was crumbling. Eliza was cornered, and for the first time since my rebirth, I realized we weren't just surviving anymore. We were winning. The fallout was swift and merciless. By the next morning, the Bennetts' pristine reputation was bleeding in the headlines. Bennett heiress caught in defamation scandal. Proof emerges against Eliza Bennett in malicious smear campaign. Possible criminal charges pending. News anchors dissected her downfall like vultures around a fresh carcass, replaying Damien's statement on loop. The Bennett mansion, once a symbol of unshakable prestige, was now under siege by reporters, their cameras flashing at every possible angle. Inside, I could picture the chaos. Her parents pale with shock, trying to call in favors from people who suddenly weren't available, her grandfather barking orders into the phone, and Liam, silent, distant, watching the empire crack from within. Eliza herself tried to fight back, posting a teary-eyed video claiming she was set up, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. But within minutes, internet sleuths dismantled her claims with more evidence. Damning voice recordings, private texts, even one where she admitted, "I'll make her cry until she leaves." The sympathy she'd tried to fish for evaporated instantly. Damien, of course, didn't stop there. That evening, he informed me with a smug gleam in his eye that we were attending the Rivera Foundation Gala, a star-studded event crawling with media, socialites, and the same high society crowd who once whispered behind my back. I knew instantly why. It wasn't just about showing up. It was about making sure she saw me untouchable. When we walked into the grand ballroom, hand in hand, Damien in his perfectly tailored black suit, and me in a crimson silk gown that clung in all the right places, the crowd parted like water. Eyes followed us. Phones lifted discreetly. The power shift was palpable. And then I saw her. Eliza, standing stiffly with her parents, her makeup flawless but her smile brittle, the humiliation simmering beneath her skin. She tried to glare, but the moment Damien's arm tightened around my waist, she faltered. "Oh, look who's here," I said sweetly, my voice carrying just enough to draw attention. "I'd say it's nice to see you, but—" I let the sentence hang, my smile cutting sharper than glass. Damien chuckled under his breath, adding, "Careful, Eliza. The press loves a redemption story, but yours isn't coming." Her parents stiffened, her mother's hand gripping her arm, but they didn't dare speak in front of Damien. Liam stood just behind them, his expression unreadable, though his eyes lingered on me with something like regret. I didn't stop to acknowledge it. Damien led me toward the center of the ballroom, our heads high, our pace unhurried. A silent announcement that we were untouchable. Cameras flashed like lightning, catching the moment perfectly. Arya Blackwell, the woman they'd tried to destroy, standing victorious beside the man who had burned her enemies without breaking a sweat. As we exited later, Damien's hand warm at my back, I realized this wasn't just revenge anymore. It was transformation. And somewhere deep down, I knew the Bennetts had only seen the beginning. The weeks after the gala seemed to melt into something softer, sweeter. The sharp edges of our revenge giving way to late-night talks, stolen kisses in the office, and quiet moments where Damien's hand would linger in mine as if afraid to let go. Somewhere in that blur of days, I realized I wasn't just grateful to him anymore. I was in love. One evening, while he was reading on the couch, glasses slipping down his nose, I blurted it out before my nerves could stop me. "I love you, Damien." For the first time, he looked completely stunned. Then his face broke into the kind of smile that made my heart skip, and he kissed me like he'd been holding his breath for months. A week later, we had a small, intimate wedding, just the two of us, a minister, and the soft glow of sunset spilling over the garden terrace. No contracts, no revenge, just vows whispered against each other's lips. Months passed in a blissful haze until one morning, holding a little white stick in my shaking hand, I realized we'd crossed into something entirely new. I was pregnant. I decided to make it a surprise, so that evening I served Damien dinner with a special dessert, a cupcake with Daddy to be written on it in frosting. He stared at it for a full 5 seconds before the meaning hit, and then chaos. He shot out of his chair, pacing like a madman, muttering, "We're having a baby! We're having a baby!" before scooping me up and spinning me around the kitchen, nearly knocking over a chair. When we told his parents over dinner the next week, his mother gasped and cried, his father beamed, and even his usually stoic grandfather cracked a smile, declaring he wanted the first photo. 2 years later, on a warm Sunday afternoon, our home was filled with laughter as our little boy, dark-haired, bright-eyed, and mischievous like his father, toddled between us, squealing when Damien scooped him up and tickled his sides. We visited the Blackwell mansion often. My son adored Damien's parents and spent hours listening to his great-grandfather's exaggerated adventure stories. Watching Damien play with our son in the garden, the sunlight catching in their hair, I felt an overwhelming peace. We had fought our battles, earned our happiness, and built a life no one could take from us. And as Damien wrapped his arm around me, pressing a kiss to my temple while our boy giggled in the grass, I knew with absolute certainty that this was the ending I had always deserved.